People often said fate liked to play dress up, slipping into disguises, arranging coincidences, pushing strangers into each other's arms at the most inconvenient of times. For Elena Rivera, fate didn't just knock on her door. It shoved her into a stranger's life and locked the door behind her. That stranger, Adrian Cole, a billionaire CEO with a guarded heart, and a little girl who would change everything. But on the night they met, Elena wasn't supposed to be there at all. "Elena, please, just this one time. I can't go. He'll be furious if I cancel again." Elena pressed the phone closer to her ear, balancing a patient's chart in one hand and a half-empty coffee in the other. It was nearly the end of her 12-hour hospital shift, and exhaustion weighed on her bones. But her best friend's voice, urgent, pleading, kept her upright. "Camilla," Elena whispered, stepping into the supply closet for privacy. "You want me to go on a blind date? With your date? Do you realize how insane that sounds?" Camilla huffed dramatically. "It's not a real date. It's more like an arrangement. This guy, this CEO, wants a girlfriend for a charity gala. He's picky, rich, and apparently impossible to please. I can't make it tonight, but if I stand him up again, I'll lose the agency contract. Elena, you know how badly I need this gig." Elena rubbed her temple. She was a nurse, not an actress. She was used to blood pressure cuffs and bedpans, not fine dining and pretending to be someone she wasn't. "Camilla, I'll look ridiculous," Elena said. "He'll know right away." Her friend's tone softened. "He won't. You're beautiful, Elena, you just don't see it. Please, think of it as sitting through one fancy dinner. You don't even have to impress him. Just buy me some time until I reschedule. Please." Elena exhaled. Rent was due, and her paycheck barely covered it. Camilla promised to split the commission if she helped. That meant groceries, maybe even paying off the overdue electric bill. Against every ounce of common sense, Elena whispered, "Fine. One dinner. But after that, I'm out." Across town, in the tallest glass tower that bore the coal industry's logo, Adrian Cole adjusted his cufflinks with mechanical precision. 34 years old, CEO of a multinational empire, father to a 6-year-old daughter, and utterly, profoundly alone. He didn't have time for romance. Didn't have patience for gold diggers. The only reason he agreed to this ridiculous dating agency arrangement was because his board members and social circle never stopped hounding him. "You need a woman at your side," they said. "Think of your daughter's image," they urged. "Even a pretend girlfriend would look better than your loneliness," they teased. So, Adrian relented. One dinner, one trial run, then he'd cut ties and return to his carefully constructed solitude. Or so he thought. Elena stood outside the 5-star restaurant, tugging at the borrowed dress Camilla had pressed into her hands. Deep navy silk clung to her curves, far too glamorous for a nurse who spent most of her life in scrubs. She felt like an imposter, a fraud waiting to be exposed. Inside, chandeliers spilled golden light over polished marble floors. Waiters glided like dancers, carrying trays of champagne. And at the center table, commanding the room without trying, sat Adrian Cole. He was more intimidating than she imagined. Tall, broad-shouldered, sharp suit tailored to perfection. His presence radiated control, the kind that made people lower their voices instinctively. Elena swallowed hard. She had stitched wounds, delivered babies, and worked 36-hour shifts without sleep. But nothing terrified her quite like walking toward this man. Adrian's eyes lifted from his watch, narrowing slightly as they landed on her. For a fleeting moment, irritation flickered across his face, like he'd expected disappointment. But then, his gaze lingered. Something softened. "Elena," he asked when she reached the table, his voice deep and smooth. Her throat tightened. She almost corrected him. "I'm not Elena, I'm Camilla's stand-in." But at the last second, fear of ruining Camilla's contract forced her tongue still. "Yes," she managed. "Elena." Technically not a lie. Adrian studied her like an unsolved puzzle. She was different from the women he usually encountered, those polished socialites with rehearsed laughs and diamond-studded smiles. This woman fidgeted with her napkin, eyes darting nervously around the room. Her beauty wasn't painted on. It was raw, unpolished, startling in its honesty. "You're late," Adrian said finally, more out of habit than annoyance. My shift ran over, she blurted before realizing her mistake. She wasn't supposed to mention being a nurse. Camilla's character was an aspiring actress. Adrian tilted his head. Shift. Heat rose in her cheeks. I mean, traffic. Long traffic shift. She mentally winced. Smooth, Elena. But instead of interrogating her, Adrian allowed a faint smile to tug at his lips. Traffic shift. Interesting. The conversation moved cautiously at first. Safe topics, polite questions. But every time Adrian probed into her supposed acting career, Elena stumbled. Instead, she spoke passionately about patients, about hospital chaos, about little victories that made 12-hour shifts worthwhile. She expected him to grow bored. Instead, he listened, really listened. His eyes sharpened whenever her voice lit with emotion. By dessert, Adrian found himself intrigued. Against his own expectations. Dinner ended, but Adrian didn't want the night to. On impulse, he said, "Come with me. There's someone I want you to meet." Elena froze. Meet? Who? My daughter, Adrian said simply. Before she could protest, he led her to his black town car, and minutes later, they pulled up to a gated mansion overlooking the city skyline. Inside, a little girl with chestnut curls and bright eyes came running down the grand staircase. "Daddy," she squealed, throwing herself into Adrian's arms. Then her gaze landed on Elena, and curiosity lit her face. "Who's this?" the child asked boldly. Adrian glanced at Elena, something unreadable in his eyes. "This is, Elena, a friend." The girl tilted her head, studying her with the same intensity as her father. Then she broke into a grin. "You're pretty. Do you like dolls? I have lots. Come play." Before Elena could react, tiny fingers wrapped around her hand, tugging her toward a playroom filled with stuffed animals and glittering toys. Adrian watched silently as his daughter laughed for the first time in weeks, tugging Elena into her little world as though she'd belonged there all along. For the first time in years, Adrian felt the faintest, most dangerous stirrings of hope. Maybe fate had disguised itself again. Elena hadn't planned to return after that night. It was supposed to be one dinner, one substitution, one harmless lie. But Adrian's daughter, Lila, called her the next morning. Somehow, the little girl had memorized her number. "Miss Elena, will you come over? Daddy works too much. I need someone to braid my hair." Elena's heart cracked open. She told herself it was just one visit. Then another, and another. Before long, she wasn't just a stranger at Adrian Cole's dinner table. She was part of their home. It couldn't last forever. One evening, Adrian stood in the doorway of his study, his gaze sharp as glass. "You're not who you said you were." Elena's stomach dropped. Camilla had confessed. The truth had reached him. "I should fire you from our lives," he said, voice low, controlled. But then, his eyes flicked toward the playroom, where Lila's laughter rang out. "I'd have to break my daughter's heart." Tears stung Elena's eyes. "I never meant to lie. I was just filling in." But somewhere along the way, it stopped being an act. Silence. Heavy. Unforgiving. Then Adrian stepped closer, his expression unreadable. "Do you think fate cares about contracts? About lies?" "It gave my daughter back her smile. It gave me you." Adrian could have ended it there. He could have dismissed her like every other fleeting presence in his life. But he didn't. Instead, he reached for her trembling hand, his voice breaking for the first time. "Stay. Not as an actress, not as a stand-in. Stay as yourself. Stay forever." Elena's breath caught. She saw his loneliness, his hope, his desperate need to believe in something real again. And in that moment, her decision was easy. Months later, whispers swirled around the city. The untouchable CEO had been captured. Not by a contract, not by wealth, but by a nurse with tired eyes and a heart big enough to heal two souls at once. On the day of their wedding, Lila tugged Elena's dress and whispered, "See. I told you Daddy just needed forever." Adrian, standing at the altar, smiled for the first time in years. And this time, he knew, he'd never let her go.